The second, that as feminist movement, we oppose women's position of being counterparts to powerful men, welcoming the first F. Here.
Am I audible?
Yes, you're
Okay. Wait, my timer. Right, I'm going to start my speech in 3, 2, one. For contextualization, I think for centuries, society has taught women that their highest value is to be the muse or the support system or the beautiful accessory to a great man. That I think that this is not a power, this is just a proximity to power. Our stance is simple, like as the feminist movement, we refuse to celebrate roles that are defined entirely by a woman's relationship to a man. We believe that true liberation is autonomy, a power that belongs to the woman herself and only true woman, which cannot be taken away by a divorce or even a breakup or even scandal made by the man. But to characterize who are counterparts, I think counterparts are women whose primarily public relevance, status, or power is derived exclusively for their romantic or even martial association with a powerful man. I know the context slide has provided, but just to be sure, like the VAGs, for example, or even the first lady, or even political spouses. And to clarify, we're not talking about women who happen to marry to a powerful man but have their own independent careers. For example, like Amal Clooney is a lawyer first, and George Clooney's wife in a second. We celebrate her because she put herself up first. We are opposing the role of a professional wife where the identity is his partner. But what does oppose mean, right? We're not saying that we will ban this woman or hate them personally. Opposing means three things. I think first, it's we stop celebrating them as a feminist icon or even, the portrayal of how feminists succeed. We don't put them on the cover of the Fog, the magazine as a symbol of female empowerment just because they married a footballer. But second, we criticize the institution that forced women into these roles, e.g., we critique the role of a first lady as an archaic, unpaid job that demands a woman's sacrifice of her own career to support her husband. But thirdly, we focused on our media attention, advocacy, and praise on women who have self-made power, like CEOs, scientists, athlete, politician, that the woman is by herself, regardless of who they date. Like, the Indonesians delegate for last year, World University Debating Championship. I think to portray our world, before moving on to the argument, the concept of the first lady or even VAG does not exist as a public category in our world because in politics the spouse of a president or prime minister is treated exactly like the spouse of a surgeon or even a software engineer. They're just a private citizens. They have no staff, no e-swing, no policy portfolio, and no expectation to decorate the White House or even pick a pattern. If they have career, they continue it. They're not the mother of the nation. They simply the person who married to the person is doing the job. In culture and sport, I think media outlet do not report on VAGs in the stand. A supermodel dating a footballer is reported on as a supermodel. A lawyer married to a CEO is recognized for her legal cases, not her attendance at the company gala, for example. And the chief our woman is never going to be introduced as Mrs. the man's name. They are the protagonist of their own life, never a supporting character in a man's narrative. I think that's what we are going to push under our side of the house. But then, why this portrayal of the world is principally better for the feminist movement itself? The opposition to the counterfeit culture rests on the principle that identity and power must be autonomous, not associative. because then first it destroyed the accessory model of a womanhood. The existence of roles like VAGs or traditional first lady subtly reinforced the idea that a woman's ultimate success is to attract and support a powerful man because that's the highest you can get, and there's a big appreciations coming from there. The problem are it treated woman as a trophy or an accessory status symbol that validate the man's power. It reduces human being to an ornament on someone's life, maybe a little bit extreme, but that's what it happened because how they portray you in a magazine, basically to just Trump's wife, for example. Yeah, but that's the thing. This phenomenon create two critical harm because first, it create a golden cage for the woman. It forces them to separate but equal in a sphere where they must perform soft, nurturing roles to avoid being labeled as too ambitious or not suitable to be a husband of someone. This erases their professional identity. When a world-renowned barrister is headlined merely as a celebrity wife, we see a literal erasure of the female achievement in favor of the patriarchal proximity because the Trump's wife is a great woman, but the moment it's happening, the framing is happening, is just going to be a Trump's wife, right? I think in comparison, by rejecting these roles, we force society to value women for what they do, not for whom they support. It teaches these young girls that we are one to advocate for the regeneration of womanhood and for the growing of the feminist value that proximity to power is not an achievement, right? Why is it exclusive to the feminist movement? I think only feminist movement understand that the gender psychology behind of why these roles exist, right? Patriarchy is built on the assumption that men are the protagonists of the history and women are the other things. The counterpart role is the institutionalization of this idea. It's formalized the expectation that woman's primary public duty is to humanize, support, and decorate the powerful man. We know that this is a gendered issue because it's rarely reciprocal. When a Margaret Thatcher or Angela Merkel were in power, their husband did not become the first gentleman who pick out China pattern or even launch anti-bullying campaign. They remain a private citizens. Only through feminism fight for the right of women to be the protagonist of her own life, because then there's no alternative or to whom we are going to oppose this heavily framings in the world that already exists, right? But secondly, about the harm of the derivative status, which is kind of practical. Even if woman gains a platform through this role, if the opposition going to say it, this is just gonna be a part of you just showing your achievement because of your man, because it reinforces the patriarchal division of labor. It tells the public that women are suited for the emotional or even domestic side of the governments, while men are suited for the rational or even structural side. It keeps women on the support staff of history, right? Because then you are going to be divided in a part of your task in your government. For example, if you have happen to be the wife of a president, but then the most boring things are you're just going to have the easiest things you can do as a spouse of a president, for example, that I don't think you are going to elevate from that any furthermore to push for a change, right? And let's see, even if the opposition are saying in the best scenario is the Michelle Obama or even something that these women are brilliant, they will argue that without the first lady or even partner this woman would have less reach. For example, I think even in their best case, the opposition ignore the fragility of the derivative status. Like if the marriage end or if the husband reputation is tarnished, the woman works immediately delegitimized or even retracted. Like Melania Trump to every Michelle Obama, when your husband get mentioned more in the Epstein file, no amount of defending can restore your reputation as this man's wife. You're just going to destroy your career without even your consent, right? And I think that's what we are going to push. So that's why we are proud to propose.
All right, thank you very much for the speech from the first half. To open the case from the negative team, welcoming the first deck. Here.
We will dismantle the negative themes case first by giving them some clarifications. The negative case fails to realize that there is a difference between economic privilege with derivative identity. So they're talking about Najwa Shihab to suggest because some women have famous fathers. This is a fundamental misunderstanding of our case. We must distinguish between these two. Najwa did not gain her platform by standing silently as the son of her father, which is a wali or whatever. She is a journalist who earns her labor. If she disagrees with her father, her career still remains because it is distinct from her father's achievement. Second, the opposition is, and the negative is actually proving our point by reducing a journalist in the caliber of Najwa Shihab to, oh, she's the daughter of Quraish Shihab. They are demonstrating the exact erasure of identity that we are fighting against. They're proving that even when a woman builds a career as the founder of Narasi TV, blah, 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 patriarchy tries to footnote her as, oh, she's just a doctor of a major wali or something. Third, we are opposing the role, not a person. Yes, Michelle Obama or whoever can have good qualities, but as herself, but we are opposing her glorification because of the fact that she is Barack Obama's wife or etc. It is unpaid and elected and demands a gender performance of support. On the contrary, Najwa Shihab is a professional, and the counterpart is an accessory, which means that all of their examples about Ainon, Michelle Obama, etc., will elevate better under the affirmative proposal because they are not seen as Gus Dur's doctor, Obama's wife, and etc. If the negative says that WAG women can have privileges due to the connection with powerful men, it is exactly what we want to abolish. We want them to be able to gain access to those privileges independently in the first place. The negative cases fail to realize that women's quality and status is dependent on their spouses. Your ideal and influential woman still exists from the lens of patriarchy. Wow, Michelle Obama is such an ideal woman. That is why Barack married her. Women who are able to marry well also comes from the elite society. For example, Melania Trump was a supermodel who was introduced by Jeffrey Epstein to Donald Trump. So there goes your equality argument. I think it will be far more sustainable, far more equitable for poor women and etc. under our case. To extension from my first speaker's argument. I think that's the first extension should be titled uh it these counterpart roles kill female potential before it starts. Like, look at my feminist movement, dog. We made female subordination look like achievement. Like, for example, Messi's wife has 41 million Instagram followers, while Nobel laureate Malala Yousafzai has like, I don't know, 1 or 2 million. This is why, like, universities report 5 female students choosing majors based on where I will meet successful men. Oh, maybe I will go to Penn. Maybe I will go to Boston because I will meet future CEOs there, not because I am interested in making myself grow. We want to break this. That is the goal of the feminist movement. There are currently like two routes. The first that is which I talked before, be your own person, grow and building skills. And that is the shortcut. Be attractive, charming, supportive, going to top universities, which mind you, only elites could be able to undertake because these women have like powerful fathers or whoever that can pay for their tuition or can arrange political marriages with them. We are essentially advertising, you are essentially advertising this route as a superior strategy. Like, you're poisoning the ambition of millions of girls who could have been leaders. Meanwhile, women with actual independent power get a fraction of this visibility, just like your initial example about Najwa Shihab, how she is seen as the daughter of her father. Because being accountable is more celebrated. Like, link back to my example about the difference of Messi's wife and Malala Yousafzai's followers. Because and the end of the day, you're concerned about agency. I think it is very superficial because there is no agency at the end of the day. The market has spoken, the patriarchal world has spoken. Being attached to a powerful man generates 40 million more Instagram followers than than winning the fucking Nobel Prize on your own. This is the fact of patriarchy. Your agency is repressed by material conditions. Whereas the agency for Korean women, for example, who are pushed to be chaebol wives, counterparts to like wealthy business dynasty here. That is why like most K-pop dramas are depicts young, beautiful women who are marrying their favorite CEO here or something. These women, despite South Korea having one of the highest literacy for women, one of the highest education for women, they are there because they want to see credentials for marriage markets, not career markets, because they understand the social conditions has made it so it is impossible for them to pursue an agency of their own. So when we withdraw this validation, no more first ladies on magazine covers or the wife of Mark Zuckerberg on covers, these talented charismatic women does not opt into this marriage or whatever markets. Their energy is redirected into competition so they can become the next Najwa Shihab. They can become the next Malala Yousafzai. When we actively critique this narrative, the first lady as an unpaid labor trap, etc., we delegitimize this, makes it socially embarrassing to like leech on your partner or etc. When we redirect resources, we can force people to have a change of mindset and to recognize these women as having independent qualities of their own. This is why I think your argument about how first ladies and etc. can still do good is it's nonsense, because everything that they do good is ultimately tied to their husband's position. Why can Michelle Obama become a big philanthropist? It is because her husband is the president, and even her name Obama is the first thing that a person will think when seeing that name is, oh, this must be the work of her husband. Second extension, I think that this counterpart narrative sanitize the male power abuse that ultimately undermine our movement, the feminist movement in the first place, because powerful men are vulnerable to public perception, right? That power depends on legitimacy, public approval, and these counterparts function as humanizing prop. For example, Donald Trump has the more moderate and family-oriented version of his political campaign in millennia. So the millennials virtue transferred to him, laundering his reputation without fixing his behavior. This image management, like yes, he has a wife and a daughter. He could not have been inside the Epstein file because he has a wonderful family. This dynamic protects abusers across all domains and undermine the very thing that we want to prop up this woman as independent leaders. And even in your best case, when like Michelle Obama gets called a feminist icon, we're accidentally advertising that the best feminist strategy is marrying Barack Obama. By opposing this celebration, we remove this shield. When the counterparts have no special status, I think the loyalty to them carries no special weight. The man must defend himself on marriage. This is urgent because every counterpart who legitimizes a powerful man uses the feminist coded language. Oh, I support my partner. My husband is good to enable patriarchal power structure. Remember that the context of this world is very, very patriarchal, very, very capitalistic. So this active critique of counterparts just forces the whole system to rethink it to favor women based on merit. Likely, this forces institutional adaptation so that women will be seen as merit. Because if we do not see the merit of their spouses will be accountable. For example, if Donald Trump is convicted of being in the Epstein files, then in our ideal world, Melania will be seen as someone who is just unfortunately married to Donald Trump, while she has her own quality. So her own quality still shines instead of being tied to the Trump brand, Trump name. This is what you actually want as well, negative. So if you want all of this, you should let women be independent and enable to them to gain agency to uh, benefit from all these qualities on their own. This is impossible negative. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much for the speech. So, extend the case coming from the negative team, welcoming the second negative. Period.
My speech will not reflect my personal opinion just for the sake of the debate, yeah. Mhm. Wait, the Zoom is weird. Okay, it's not weird anymore. So yeah, starting my speech in 3, 2, and 1. Two response and one extension in my speech. First response, I think when they are trying to talk, if at the end of the day, oh yeah, this narrative of women counterpart of Najwa Shihab is a professional is wrong because it is something that is highly dependent with, privilege and something like that. Firstly, let's talk about women in the society will see this fact. How can be an aspiring journalist can be that successful? Oh yeah, of course she is successful because she is the daughter of the Wali. This is the kind of perception that will happen in your side. Your counter narrative doesn't explain why it will happen otherwise. We we co-opt this benefit by reframing the counterpart as positive role. At the very least, it incentivizes them as a better quality. But when they also talk about, oh yeah, privilege, sure, of course, every single person has the privilege. But the action, most of the time, will not suddenly throw away the figure and say, Najwa is shit. Because most of the times there is some sort of motivational quotes and inspirational story which they can internalize from this figure of women. This is where the sense of empowerment exists within the feminist movement, which they continuously talk about, right? That is why, although maybe there's some sort of privilege, most of the women will also try to utilize what kind of privilege that they will have. Of course, because maybe you have a good family, it is also a privilege. You can go to school and have the opportunities to learn to upgrade yourself. It is also a privilege. That's why this is a sense of empowerment that we have exclusively to increase our quality, not just like them simply throw away all of this success figure that is very useful, right? But second response, I think at the end of the day, although they are trying to position if at the end of the day the standard is highly dependent into men, I think at the end of the day the standards will not be highly dependent on men based on three reasons. Yes, of course, women will be pushed to reach certain quality that they want. They still have agency in the very first place, right? Because at the end of the day, women still have, some sort of choice that they want. For the example, of course, if they want to chase a higher education, currently it is very okay because there's another feminist agenda that puts for women to enter education as well, right? That is happening on the status quo. But for women, they will see this counterpart figure, and in context of how patriarchal is a norm, will also trying to push this kind of standard towards men, right? They will demand some kind of agency and control, for example, in exchange of equal support, etc. We see this as a positive impact that we will take as negative. But see, the standard most of the times is going to the standard of capitalism as well. So don't think if man is the figure who trying to control everything into the women, that is a lie, right? Because all of people is trying to chase the capitalistic standard. Why it is very wrong if women chase it on the first place? Please prove it. But third and last response regarding independency that they are trying to pursue, probably as their counter narrative, which I'm not sure what is the significance of the benefits and how accessible it is, before the narrative of counterpart exists, because this house supports this narrative, meaning that they have to support a world where this narrative has never they need to support a world where this narrative beforehand never exists in the first place. Three response for arguments of independency. How in the middle of dependency of women in the rural area to some sorts of men, women can simply relate to your idea of independency. Because I will argue that independency also requires a lot of money. You also requires a lot of privilege and good family, for the example, in order for you to be an independent woman. That is why under your side, you create a more exclusive narrative, which it decreases the level of feminist buy-in. That is the harm under your side of the house, because more women cannot relate to our agenda anymore. But I think these debates do not exist in vacuum, right? Because both narrative exists under negative side of the house. I don't think this narrative is one of the main agenda of feminist movement anyway, right? Because there are a lot of narrative. There is an intersectionality which women push different narratives in different areas. But see, even if this will the main agenda of feminist movement, I'm gonna prove why it increased the buy-in of feminist movement, which jumped into my first and only extension. How feminist movement can increase their buy-in and the mass of followers towards the feminist movement. I think just let's take a look before the women counterpart narrative exists. How does the contextualization look like? Two things. Patriarchy from the male to hate the success figure of women exists, right? If you see the failure of women president, they will highly hate the figure of the women. If they see women ministry of women in parliament is problematic, they simply hate the figure of women. They say like, shit, sorry. Oh damn, women cannot be the leaders and whatnot, right? But women is seen as a figure that is very oppositional towards men. Aggressivity, man hates. This is where more people is becoming more not approximate to feminism, right? They will not tap into feminist movement because they think that feminist movement is where. This is where more moderate women, which is the majority of our voters that we need to champion, finally shift away to buy into the feminist movement. Once the narrative of women counterpart exists, how does it actually change? Under two layers. A, this patriarchy male now can shut their mouths because currently they see if these women are contributing to the power and the achievements of the male group. Imagine, Josh, you do bad things to a group, but then the group is apparently kind and contributive to you. What is your reaction? Of course, you're gonna feel ashamed, right? You're gonna starting to doubt your position, to hate women, and starting to consider yourself to take different stances because you feel like, oh damn, this woman is actually contribute to the development of the male because this woman is very supportive towards the achievement of the man and whatnot. You finally induct and you finally psychologically try to take different stances. But I think this superpower, when this superpower male exists, the counterpart, I think when the superpower male probably, for example, create problems and be problematic, the counterpart women will not be highly stigmatized, right? This is where the benefits are significant. If you see Trump is bad, Elon Musk is shitty, no one will blame the woman as an antagonist figure because all that highlight is concentrated to the bad policies of Trump, where actions by Elon Musk, etc. The woman counterpart will just stay in silence. So the stigmatization towards women will not happen. Meanwhile, if the superpower male is great, this is where women is also highlight because women can take opportunities in it, right? This is where if we see previously, Bu Seri Chonda is highly exposed as someone affectionate toward Benny Laos, ex-governor of Maluku, until all of people in Maluku and Indonesia really appreciate Bu Seri Chonda as the women leader of figure, right? Why then this is important? Because two reasons. A, because this is the form of safe space for women. It means that women get a low risk of advocacy, but a high return to flip the male hates characterization. This is the golden opportunity that we believe feminists needs to utilize as maximum as possible because at the end of the day, this is the form of advocacy which is safer than another one. But B, this also makes the women blending with the men. This is where the reputations of feminist movement will be seen as a kind figure, affectionate, even friendly to someone who have already been hurtful to us. This gives a message to the public. If feminists will stop the evil cycle of continuous hate between male and women, right? This is where finally more people will appreciate feminist movement more, buy into the feminist movement, and support our agenda, which is the most important thing for the feminist movement, proud to negate.
All right, thank you very much for the speech from the second neck. To close the substantive case from the affirmative, welcoming the third F. Here. All right, thank you very much for the speech. To close the substantive case inside of negative, welcoming the third neck. Here.
I want to ask, ada suara azan. Am I still audible right now?
Yeah, it's still audible.
Okay, again, great. Yeah. So if I went inaudible, please just interrupt me audibly. Starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. I think that, yes, as a feminist movement, and as a feminist, what we want is in the long future, the power will be 100% for female. Sure, that is like what you want as the end goal. But you cannot literally just try to pursue it now because exactly the patriarchal problem still existed. Exactly the problem that when you want this power to be 100% for women, it's still not accessible yet. Meaning that exactly what we want is for a gradual step that if women cannot be self-made, if women cannot be super successful and without being a counterpart, at the very least, we give them the option to have the counterpart. I think that what affirmative keep on pushing is that the moment when we do not oppose it, it means that self-made women will be harmed, that we will not pursue also women to be self-made as well. I think that this still existed, that both narratives still existed. Hence, what happened is that these women then have the agency to then think what is the best suited for them. Hence, I think that all of the benefit that affirmative have been able to explain, we are able to co-opt it. I think that in affirmative world can only exist for you to oppose it if women already in status quo can always be successful. And hence, I think because exactly women cannot always be successful, like just see the example of women keep being harmed by the patriarchal issue, like wage gap and etc. I think that it just simply means that it is harder for them to be successful. Hence, like two clashes here. I think first about the idea of agency. I think that it's clear that in our side, exactly when we say that all of these other narrative will existed, it means that powerful self-made women still exist. Hence, what we want is the agency for women to choose whether they want to be self-made or want to be the counterpart, because women is not only one type of woman. There's a lot of personality, a lot of what women want, meaning that there are women also that existed that are just more comfortable and willing to be in a support role, to be a housewife, and etc. The moment you oppose this, you limit the agency of other women. Why? Because you will at the very least did not celebrate or appreciate women that become a counterpart. Hence, these women will not feel as appreciated by their own community. Realize current like there has been like existing like narrative of like, oh, women are supposed to be a housewife or supposed to be a supporting role. I think that this is already bad, right? To force women to be someone that they do not want, when women sometimes also want to be self-made. But equally bad as that is to force women to be self-made, to force women to open businesses when that is not what they want. I think that it is even more harmful when this narrative of opposing it come from the feminist movement itself, when it's supposed to be a movement that is required to be a safe space for women to be able to escape from the patriarchal norm and have friends to talk with, to have friends to appreciate them. But instead, you did not support it. Hence, even worse, you oppose it. I think meaning that in the idea of agency for each woman itself, it is clear that it's better in our side for them to then able to lead to this agency. And hence that internally it became very important, because before feminist movement want to, alleviate like their narrative and etc., what is most important is for their member first. But second clash then, regarding like ability to be successful, I think that ability to be successful is even better in our side. Why? We prove to you that not all women can be successful, right? When to be successful, it requires either A, privilege, or B, risk. Let's cater first. First, like as a woman, if you want to be successful, you have to be born with privileges. You have to already have connection. You have to already have like maybe a mansion when you are 15, for example. Comparatively, like most other women did not have that privilege. But also second, risk. This is very harmful. Why? Because the moment you force vulnerable women in labor and like try to say that, oh, you have to be independent, that hey, you have to be successful, you have to be self-made so that you can be appreciated like these people in the full cover, that hey, being like a wife of someone or being the wife of CEO is not enough for you to be appreciated. What happened is that in the end, in yourself, like they still did not have the power anyway, right? Like they still probably become the counterpart, but they did not get the platform. They did not get the voice. I think this cater to the idea of like fragility of like divorce and etc. It's worse because in our side, at the very least, there will be like fan base of someone who support them, for example, during divorce. Comparatively in your side, if there is divorce, for example, these women will not get any support, will not get any uh, attempt to even voice their perspective, for example. Even worse, maybe like it is easier for the male to even take custody of their children or take custody to their children, and meaning that I think in the end of the day, it is better for us to at least have this power, even in the worst case scenario of like there is this fragility. But also then, I think that when they say about all vulnerable women in labor who needs this narrative of independency, I think that two response to this. First, working standard already exists. I think that feminists already also advocate like gender pay gap. Why then you need independency for this kind of woman? I think that we prefer more optimistic narrative to help them to have a commonality and sense of belonging between women. And I think that to also cater like, oh, what if like women want to go to Harvard to find a sugar daddy? It's okay because it's what they want, because they want to just be a sugar baby. It's okay because exactly agency. You are not supposed to judge other women's choices. You're not supposed to then oppose other women's choices. If that's what they want, let them be, rather than you force them to open businesses and taking risks. I think that in the end of the day, most women and as like most people as well are just like a blue collar work laborers. In their side, you're making it worse because you're lessening the ability for a woman to gain a capital. Because maybe in our side, you at the very least are able to gain a capital from like your counterparts. But comparatively in your side, because you lack to gain that capital to be successful, then you force them, making them to take a risk using their own money to open businesses for agency. I think that sure, we agree independency in the future is important, but the prerequisite for this to happen is that when first that there is no external forces that limits you, meaning that this is why counterpart narrative is very effective in patriarchal world. At the very least, man expectation will also increase and will eventually push women to be good as well. But also, meaning that when you compare about the idea of agency for women, but also the ability for them to be successful, ability of them to gain this capital, when I think that affirmative have been so charitable that, oh, women from like ground up can also be successful. Let's ask them, is it realistic? And hence, proud to oppose.
All right, thank you very much for the speech. To close the entire case from the negative team, welcoming the negative reply. Here.
Wait. Okay. Am I audible?
Yes, sir, audible.
Thank you. Starting my speech. Starting my speech in 3, 2, and 1. 3 clash on my reply speech. First clash talking about their counter narrative, which is independency. Second clash talking about more buy-in into the feminist movement. Third clash talking about internal people within the feminist movement. First clash talking about the counter narrative. 3 layers into this. I really appreciate their, counter narrative to explain if independency is more important. Oh, okay. They have explained a very great urgency as well, like grassroots, people, women worker in labor, Marcina, and whatnot. But the biggest problem under the side of the house is that how, at the end of the day, more women will internalize this. How, at the end of the day, it affects the perceptions of all people within the society. How, at the end of the day, there will be a transformations within the psychology of the male and female. Because at the end of the day, they have never explained to what extent these people will finally internalize it. At the end of the day, I think their premise is just quite take it for granted. Sure, great urgency, but there's no explanations as to how the society will change, right? But we have explained if at the end of the day, both narratives exist. Independency and counterpart women can exist in status quo coexisting, right? Why then suddenly the narrative of counterpart women will overshadow? Why in status quo, the counterpart women is the most dominant narrative where we don't think so? We have explained if this narrative coexists with other narrative and, and struggle of feminist movement, you also highlight with the counterpart women due to intersectionality, fight of gender pay gap, etc. They have never responded into this, right? But see, we have explained to you as well, if independency is totally exclusive and not proximate, sure, okay, they say counterpart is exclusive, like they said, right? Both narratives might be exclusive, but the delta is we give you empowerment and sense of expectation fulfillment, which gives them a feeling of success, right? They have never responded to this and just continuously mitigate with counter characterizations without any impact and any mechanizations as to how women will internalize this. This is why at the end of the day, although maybe our narrative is exclusive, but it gives a sense of expectation fulfillment and empowerment motivations towards the women, which is an exclusive benefit under the side of the house, not just them throwing away all of the characterizations of Najwa Shihab, which they say, that is useless lah. Second class, talking about more buy-in into the feminist movement. 3 layers. A, how independency will lead more voters to feminist movement. Because panel understand this house oppose X means that they have to prove why previously, without the existence of X, their word is better. Meaning that they have never explained why previously, without the narrative of counterpart women, it is better for feminists to increase buy-in. That's totally questionable. But B, again, we have explained if previously, without counterpart narrative, man is totally hateful with the success of bigger women. With this counterpart women narrative, we finally can shut their mouth because this man sees that the figure of women is contributive towards man. You can get a great actions to someone you get a great actions to someone you treat bad, right? This is where male feels ashamed because women currently is seen more mature. They have never responded to this as well. But see, counterpart women as a safe space advocacy because in time of superpower man's failure, no counterpart women is hated. But when superpower man did great, the good exposure comes to the feminist movement in a good way, in a very contributive and affectionate narrative. They have never responded into this as well. Because of that, I think at the end of the day, our side can create more transformations towards society by the change of perceptions and psychology towards men and more moderate women who see this as a safe space of advocacy, right? But of course, the internal people of feminist movement, because our side create more empowerment by inspirations and motivational, which they internalize at the very least, proud to negate.
All right, thank you very much for the reply speech to close the entire fifth round of IFAT 2026. Welcoming the reply from Affirmative team. Here.
Audible?
Yes, you're audible.
Okay. I'm going to start my reply in 3, 2, 1. I do believe the negative team is trying to take a gray approach by giving you the choose under the agency reason, considering that there's a woman who is willingly to be a sugar daddy or even housewife. First off, this is sexist. But in order to credit this point, it is relatively hard because then you need to explain why you need a movement to push someone to just be a sugar daddy, even if it's decided by both sides that it is decided by both sides that it's so easy to do that. Means you can do it yourself without the support, right? They don't explain this. They themselves also said that to break the patriarchal wall is hard because that is so big right now in the third speaker. That is exactly why we don't go half-hearted by saying that you got the agency. We go full power for women that would want to do it because we know it's hard. We just don't go up to them by saying that, oh, up to you if you want to be sugar daddy, go on. No, that's not the movement is for. But then through the debate, I think both sides agree that feminist is there to elevate the woman position under status quo by Hansen saying that there's another narrative being pushed aside from this. But then if agency was your main metric and all of things, your end solution, I don't see how it extend onto the feminist movement obligation because it don't elevate nothing. It stays in status quo. And if at the end what you are trying to achieve is an agency which is inherently tied with the individual chooses, you don't need a social movement to begin with, right? But 3 clashes. I think the first one is the golden cage versus the path that they want to take, right? The opposition has spent the round defending that the counterpart is the gateway for empowerment. They, mentioned that, oh, you can still get empowerment. But judges, look at the material reality. By celebrating the shortcut of strategic marriage, the opposition is advertising, wrong road. To say that it is more profitable to be just a husband, a wife to a man than an achiever by yourself, right? The opposition world create the South Korean trap where the smartest woman in society abandon their career to optimize for the marriage marker to marry the chaebol like Tian has told you. But the second clash is the clash of autonomy and versus the derivative status. The opposition claim that our movement will fail because it's aggressive and scared of men, that they prioritize survivability. We think it is more important to prioritize what's beneath the feminist movement itself, which is the liberation. They argue that, you know, we they argue that, oh, you need to survive in order for you to go for another strike. For example, you need to, bend down right now so you can survive and you can go through this phase. You exactly have the mind to do that because you see the power is so powerful, like your third speaker has told you, that we think the only way to break this mindset is just to say that, okay, they are powerful. Now we are going to go against that. I don't think survivability is the main point, but even so, Violet has told you, even if we disappear or even if we fail, we at least send first, we send awareness. Secondly, even if we die, we think we will be reborn, like how there's a first wave, second wave, third wave, fourth wave of feminists that currently being pushed onto this history, right? But you know, last clash, the opposition said that women won't support us because they fear losing the security of patriarchal bargain. This is the biggest lie on this round because the security opposition offer is a debt trap. A counterpart is always one divorce, one scandal, one tragedy away from a total erasure, like I have told you with the Trump scandal, with the Epstein file that going to fail his wife whatsoever. That doesn't portray a single point of security to this woman. We, at the other hand, offer woman equality. We offer the power that belongs to the woman herself, a power that cannot be taken away by a breakup or even this husband's disgrace. The opposition survival is just a slow death in cage because they don't have the choice inside of the relationship. We think we prefer take the rocky road and ensure that we have a goal that is right rather than we just take a highway road to nothing, right? Because if we fail, at least we serve what we fundamentally going to do as a social movement, not what as individual in agency. Thank you.